So I'm going to give you 7 reasons that you may still have weeds in your lawn. And you know what, this can be very, very frustrating. Whether you're trying to take care of your lawn yourself or whether you're paying a company to do it for you, you're thinking, why am I spending all this time and all this money, or maybe one or the other, and I still have weeds in the yard? Is there anything I can do about it, or is my yard just cursed forever? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you the reasons. Some of them you might can fix, some of them you might not be able to, but I'm hoping you're going to learn something and know how to apply it by the time you get to the end of this video. Let's get started right now. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, because this one I guess is one that can be fixed with a little bit of information, and I think it's often, too often happens with people in their yard, and that's when they just simply make the wrong application. And what I mean by that is you just go and you buy something that says weed killer on it, or weed control, or herbicide, or whatever, and you just spray it, and it's just kind of this mindset like that whatever I spray that says weed control is supposed to kill any weed and any grass any time of the year, which is obviously not true. I say obvious to a lot of people, maybe not obvious. So it's a very much a scientific approach here about using that correct product at the correct time and then at the correct rate. So if you get one of those off, it may not work correctly. Let's just think about that for a second. If you don't do it at the correct time, let's say you put out a pre-emergent, but you did it at the wrong time. The way it works if you get it down before the weed germinated, but you applied it after the weed germinated, and it basically didn't work at all. That can be very frustrating, but you didn't necessarily know that because you didn't have all the information you need. Let's say you did just the wrong product. You put down something that would control broadleaf weeds great, but it didn't do anything to the grassy weeds in your yard or the sedges that are growing in your yard. Or let's say you did it at the wrong rate. You put it down, but you didn't do it at a strong enough rate. You didn't go by the rate on the label because you didn't want to read the label, and so it didn't work. It just kind of wounded the weed, but 2 weeks later the weed was back. Or maybe the opposite, you put it at too heavy of a rate. This might actually happen more, and you cause some damage to the lawn, which was not good either. So making sure you understand the proper product to use is very, very important. Now, the next thing I want to mention, you may notice this yard here looks nicely mowed. I've actually been mowing this with a robot mower, so I'm mowing it very, very often with a robot, which has been a pretty cool experience for me. But it could be that one of the reasons you still have weeds is your mowing habits. I wanted to share a little story with this. I've shared this before, but I got a customer canceled on me this year and fired me, I guess would be a more blunt way to say it. I do weed control and fertilization. And it was in the spring. I had sprayed herbicide on her lawn to kill the weeds. I think it was about a week later, she texted me and says, hey, I still got weeds. Maybe 10 days, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, who knows. It wasn't long, I'll say that. The weather's in the spring, still cool weather, and she said, I still got weeds. I replied back, and it wasn't surprising the customer came from, but I replied back and said, hey, have you mowed your lawn? And she replied something along the lines of mowing. What does that have to do with anything? I'm talking about killing weeds. I said, yes, I understand that, but what I was trying to get across was sometimes I spray the weeds and they're sitting there basically like a dead corpse in your yard, and you got to mow them. They don't vanish. They just need to be mowed and they won't grow back. Or they might be sick. If you mow them, they won't grow back, and they're very not noticeable in the lawn. So anyway, that was the point. And that's one way to look at it. But two, just simply mowing the grass very regularly. In some ways, yes, it just kind of hides the weeds because you're mowing regular. I mean, I can almost guarantee you there's weeds out here behind me in this lawn, but you don't hardly see them unless you really got down close because of being mowed so regular. But you know what? Just having that mowing regular is part of just overall turf quality, and definitely can put more pressures on the weeds. I think we call it mechanical controllers. I may be getting that term wrong there, but basically meaning like I'm using a machine to get rid of the weeds, like a lawnmower blade. So mowing can definitely play a part in helping control the weeds. Now for this next one, I want to actually show you what I'm talking about because I think it'll be helpful if it's more visible. Look at all this kind of debris in the yard, and what this was from a heavy rain we had last night, and you can see it's just washed up. So what I'm getting at is this yard really holds a lot of water, and in some areas it holds more than others if it's a low spot. So look at this. This is a low spot in the yard, and what is all that in there in that low spot? This is nut sedge, and it's just covered in nut sedge. Now, why is there nut sedge right here and there's not nut sedge right here? I mean, I'm talking about 6 feet over, there's almost no nut sedge, but right here is covered in nut sedge. Well, there's a couple things. I mean, the grass is thin, but mostly, I believe, it's because this is a little bit of a low area that really holds water. But what can you do about this? Well, I think for a lot of you, I would encourage you to take a look at your irrigation schedule. Now, where I live in Alabama, we've had a lot of rain this spring. So I manage a irrigation system, and I don't even turn it on at all so far this year. I don't think I've turned it on one time where I manage the irrigation. And the reason we've had so much rain, I'm like, why would I turn the irrigation on with all the rain that we had? I'm not saying don't use your irrigation system. I'm not saying don't have irrigation, but you got to consider how much water your grass actually needs and how much it's getting. We encourage people oftentimes to just water their lawn one time per week, and I usually tell them like from May to September, you know, with warm season grasses here in Alabama. Now, of course, if you're overseeding ryegrass with a cool season lawn, you might want to water that in the fall, or if it starts growing like crazy in the spring, you can water it. But for us with the warm season lawns, those are kind of the months where we really need to maybe supplement our water, May through September. But if we're getting plenty of rain, I don't think it's necessary unless it's a new lawn that's not quite established. So here's the point. Sometimes I'll go to a customer's lawn, it's 95 degrees, hadn't rained in weeks, and my boots are just squishing through the water in the backyard. I'm thinking, what is going on? Now, they may have a drainage problem, that's one thing. But then I like to often ask them, like, how often are you running that irrigation system? They say, oh, I run it every day, you know, because they're proud that they run it every day. And when I tell them, they're like, hey, I would just encourage you to run it one day a week. And, you know, if we're getting all the rain we've been getting, I would just turn it off altogether. And they're kind of surprised because in their mind, just water is good for the lawn. And that is true. Water is good for the lawn, but too much water can encourage weeds like the ones we just looked at, the nut sedge, the kalinga, doveweed. There's other weeds that just really, really like a wet lawn. And other thing, when you're watering, of course, you want to water early in the morning. That way, you're doing two things. One, you're allowing the water to get to the lawn before it gets super hot so it doesn't evaporate. Hopefully the lawn can use it before it evaporates. But at the same time, you don't want it sitting on the lawn all night long, which is the case when you water in the evening, which can lead to fungus issues. But I've said fungus issues or fungi issues. I don't know how that goes when you're talking about it in that context. Another reason you may have weeds in your lawn, and this one may not be one that you want to hear, but some of these weeds are just really tough to kill. Again, if you look over this lawn, you're like, wow, that's a beautiful lawn, until you get down here and you see this, and you got a big old nasty clump of Dallas grass. Now, that's just one of the weeds that's tough to control in a lawn. In general, this is not always true, but I would consider grassy weeds and sedges a little bit more difficult to control than broadleaf weeds. Most of your broadleaf weeds can be fairly easily controlled. Now, that don't mean that they're not going to come back and they're not going to have more of them, but they're pretty easy to knock out. The grassy weeds and the sedges are tough, and you can suppress them. Some of them are hard to make go away forever. Sometimes it takes multiple applications, and there's a few of them that just, I don't think that I know of a solution how to get rid of them. So some other weeds that are really tough to get rid of if you have them, some of them just nearly impossible to get rid of. One would be Virginia buttonweed. If you're familiar with that, you could Google that one if you don't know that one. Torpedo grass, you can Google that if you want to read about a weed that people hate really bad. It's very difficult to get rid of, and they'll take over a lawn. We have one in our area, it's called knotroot foxtail. Now, there's an annual foxtail, but this knotroot foxtail, really difficult to control. I went to a yard yesterday that had it in there, and I texted the customer, I said, you know what, I could probably suppress this weed, but it's going to be difficult to control. Dallas grass, broom sedge, you know, these are hard weeds to get rid of in the yard. Another thing we mentioned was just overall poor turf quality. So you saw back there where we had the nut sedge, the grass is just thin and looks terrible. Sometimes I have customers and they want me to spray their weeds, but they don't want any fertilizer. I don't particularly love doing that. I might do it for somebody that I know, but one of the problems with that is well, a few problems. One, they want it to look as good as if they had all the treatments a lot of times if you do less treatments, so that's one challenge. Another challenge with that is they often have thinner turf that's not as healthy because you're not pumping the nutrients to it, and that can actually lead to weed problems. So it's kind of like the fertilizer, while not weed control, can thicken up the turf and make it less susceptible to weeds. So think about this, for warm season grass people. We have Bermuda lawns and zoysia lawns. Which one gets more weeds in it? Well, typically it's a Bermuda. Which one grows thicker? Typically that's your zoysia. So it's that thick zoysia turf, it very rarely gets many weeds. Is there a fly on my face? I could feel the thing, but I didn't want to stop the video. So with that same logic, which would get more weeds in it? Thin, nasty Bermuda or thick, healthy Bermuda? Yeah, Bermuda is not as thick and lush as like an emerald zoysia lawn. Is so thick, I don't know where a weed would live if it wanted to. But on a thin, scraggly Bermuda lawn, you know, it just doesn't do a great job. And oftentimes, the parts of the yard that you'll see weeds in is the yards where the grass is the thinnest. Maybe near a shadier area where that Bermuda is not as thin, or maybe the area where the utility company came and dug up your yard to run the new fiber cable network, and the grass came back thin, and what jumped up in there was the weeds before the grass could fill back in. Now, I may be slightly off on my count here, but I think we're on number 6. And I mentioned this before, but want to elaborate a little bit more, and that's just the wrong timing on your application. When you're doing your pre-emergent application, let me just give you a basic understanding of what you could do at a bare minimum. What we want to do, I'm going to use my Alabama time frame where I live. So I'm trying to get that first pre-emergent application down before March usually. Now sometimes crabgrass and other warm season weeds can germinate typically in March in our area, sometimes late February. Now I know that if you live up north and it's super cold, that may be pushed back to April, but you want to get that pre-emergent down. The one we use often is called prodiamine before the crabgrass germinates or these other warm season weeds. Now when you move over to the fall, we're trying to get that pre-emergent application down, whether you're using prodiamine or spectacles, what we use a lot of times on our warm season lawns. We're trying to get ahead of weeds like poa annua. So if I can get that application down in, let's say, mid to late September, early October, before we start getting those cool nights, again, wherever you live, the weather could be different. The weather could be different in the same area from year to year. You know, one year, October the 1st, it might be, 85 degrees where I live. The next year, it might be 65 degrees. So you might want to look at the weather more than just the calendar, but getting that pre-emergent down at the right timing is very critical. Even from a post-emergent standpoint, if you can control weeds while they're young, you have a better chance of controlling them than when they're strongest, healthiest part of their life. And sometimes when they're getting older in their life cycle, like if you're trying to knock out crabgrass, getting it when it's very young or when it's very old is helpful. By the time it's very old, I'm thinking, you know what, I'm just going to let the winter knock it out. I'm not really worried about it at that point. It can be very difficult to control crabgrass in the middle of summer when it's growing at its strongest point. Before I give you the last one, I want to mention 2 things. One, I'm now doing a 1-year mentorship that's going great. We've been at it for about a month now. Anybody can join in at any time. If you're interested in that, it's for people that want to get into a weed control and fertilization business like me, in particular those with warm season grasses. So if you're looking to start out on that and just don't know where to go, and you would like a mentor to guide you for a full year, then what you can do is use the link in the description below and book a free 15-minute call with me. We'll discuss it and see if it's going to be a fit for you and if the program will make sense. Also, if you're just a homeowner out there trying to kill weeds in your Bermuda and zoysia lawn, you want to know exactly what I do to the lawns, and you want to have a video course that can tell you step by step what to do, going over a lot of things like fertilizer, insect control, fungus control, how to spread fertilizer, how to spray, things of that nature, then you can check out the Bermuda Zoysia Academy. The link is in the description below. Last one here, number 7, I believe, and that is, the simple fact that weeds are tough. If you just had a perfect yard, let's just say it's perfect circumstances, and all your neighbors' yards are perfectly clean, and the lawn mowing guy always washed off his lawnmower before he came and cut your grass, so he didn't bring any seeds from the previous yard over, and no birds flew over and dropped seeds in your yard, and all the things, the house seeds spread, and no wind blew a seed in your yard, whatever. Everything's going perfect. I mean, I guess if everything literally went perfect, maybe you wouldn't have any weeds. But the truth of the matter is, weeds do come. We can't stop the birds. We can't stop necessarily all these circumstances. The wind's gonna blow, and it's just part of it. There's weeds that come, and you can have a nice, thick, healthy turf, but ultimately, you need a good plan of action, a good turf nutrition program, putting down fertilizer, and a weed control and fertilization strategy. It doesn't have to be complicated, but to do nothing almost never works out. Now, again, some grasses look better by doing nothing than others. You know, a centipede yard that's mowed regularly might look pretty decent with nothing done to it. Even a thick zoysia line, once established, may have relatively few weeds when taken care of. And you know, you guys with the cool season grasses, the thing's just green as can be in the fall and winter, and maybe kind of camouflages the weeds. If it's mowed nice, it looks pretty good. But I've been plenty of places, even with the cool season grasses, and when I see them, I can tell the ones that have been taken care of and the ones that have not, and there's a clear difference in the appearance of the lawn. I told you I had a robot mowing the lawn. I appreciate you watching this video. Let me know what your questions are, your thoughts are in the comments. Hope this is helpful for you, and I would encourage you to stick around and watch some more videos. We'll see you in the next one.